Where is the pure source? The spring of life, where is it? It is in the Quran and in the Sunnah. This is where it is. It is in the Quran and in the Sunnah. This is revelation from Allah. This is where salvation, where life lies. And we have to be very careful that we don't fall into the same situation which the pagans exhibited in the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as referred to in Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 104, wherein Allah describes the response of the pagans to the call to the Quran and the Sunnah. If we said this is the source of life, and the pagans who went astray, who died in a state of disbelief and went to hell, their response we should be well aware of. What was their response? Allah says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ وَإِلَى الرَّسُولِ. And if you say to them, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, come to what Allah has revealed and to His Messenger, to the Quran and to the Sunnah. قالوا, their response, حسبنا ما وجدنا عليه آباءنا. It is enough for us what we found our foreparents doing. It is enough for us what we found our foreparents doing. This was the response of the pagans. This was the response of disbelief. This was the response which caused Abu Talib to go to hell. Abu Talib, who raised Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who knew who he was, who knew he was a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But on his deathbed, when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ invited him and said, say la ilaha illallah, uncle, say la ilaha illallah, and I will be a witness with you before Allah on the day of judgment. And Abu Talib's brothers were there saying to him, are you going to embarrass our family? Are you going to degrade our family? Are you going to reject the ways of our foreparents? Were our foreparents all wrong? Was Abdul Muttalib wrong? Was Abdul Manaf wrong? Were they all wrong? Are you going to reject that? And Abu Talib chose to go with the way of his foreparents. And what was the result? Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that he receives the least punishment on the day of judgment. The least. For the good that he did in terms of raising the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, protecting him, etc., etc. He received the least. But what is the least? Described in Sahih Muslim. That the hellfire will reach up to his ankles. Only his ankles will be in the hellfire. But it will be enough for his brains to boil. And he will think that he is receiving the worst punishment of anybody in hell. That is the result. That is the consequence of that response. Hasbuna ma wajadna alayhi aba'ana. It is enough for us what our foreparents did, what they're doing. That's enough. This is the response of misguidance, the response of the pagans. So we have to be very careful about this. when we are invited, when somebody invites us to what Allah and His Messenger said, that we do not respond to them by saying what? Well, this is not what my parents did. My parents were doing something else, and I'm going to do what they did. I am from this community or that community. Our community does this and that and the other. The explanation is not, well, Allah also said that, or Prophet Muhammad ﷺ also said that. So we can properly choose, because of course, not everybody who comes to you and says, Allah said this and the Prophet ﷺ said that, is necessarily having the right understanding, and so you just automatically should stop whatever you're doing and follow it. Because the knowledge of the Quran is vast, and the Sunnah is also vast. Therefore, we also have to have a knowledge and a comparative knowledge of the Sunnah as well as the Quran. So, that response, which is based on comparative knowledge, this is an acceptable response. We're trying to judge what is right according to knowledge. We're not doing it according to emotion, because this is what was the response of the pagans. That is based on emotion. My parents did it. My grandparents did it. My great-grandparents were doing it. So were they all wrong? Am I going to say they were all wrong? See, this is emotion. This is not looking at a thing, is it right or is it wrong, really? Factually speaking, what is our criterion for determining right and wrong? Emotion blinds. We have to do it on the basis of knowledge, correct knowledge. So, we have to develop the correct knowledge of Allah, the correct knowledge of the Sunnah, and in the process, we have to eliminate from ourselves the vestiges of dhatu anwat. Meaning, we have to look into ourselves and into our practices and remove those practices which are from pre-Islamic times, which we have inherited, which we have adopted from the cultures around us, etc. Some of these practices may seem very simple. Some of them may seem very big. But we have to know that no matter how small things are, for us to make a big change, we have to be able to make small changes. Because if we find difficulty in making small changes, you can be sure we're not going to be able to make the big change. So, when knowledge comes to us on a personal level, that knowledge may be about simple, small things. In terms of men, that knowledge may be, brother, grow your beard. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said in Sahih Bukhari, grow your beards and trim your mustaches. Some brothers say, this is not important. It's not an important part of the religion. Islam is in the heart. You must be sincere, everything else. This is what needs to be. No, these outward things are not important. But one has to question oneself. Is Islam only inward, or is it both inward and outward? Why are we so reluctant? Why are we so unwilling to do something so basic when there's clear instruction for us? Or another person may say, brother, your pants are below your ankles. Raise your pant above your ankle. Brother, what is this? Is this all the religion is? It's just about your short pants or long pants? Come on, man. This is more important things. There's an atomic bomb being developed here in India and one in Pakistan, and what's going to happen? And you're going to tell me about shortening my pants? We have to question here. You see, this is a small thing. It may seem to be insignificant. But Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said in authentic hadith, that what is below the ankle is in the hellfire. He said that. big thing of it. So it is not the person who comes and passes this information to us. We should not respond to, oh, why are you making such a big thing about such a small thing? No, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ made a big thing about it. And we have to question ourselves. Why is it such a problem for us to shorten our pants? Brother says, well, you know, the hadith, when it spoke about Abu Bakr, it said, the one who drags his garment or lets it below the ankle out of pride. So I'm not doing it out of pride. It's not pride. We say, brother, why don't you shorten the pant? Look into yourself. Is it because you feel that in doing that you will be out of style? You're not in fashion? This out of fashion is the fashion of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And he said, فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever loves a way, a fashion other than mine, is not a true follower of mine. Aren't we here loving the ways of the disbelievers? Isn't it their fashion? Isn't it they who put their pants below their ankles? And they did it at a particular period of time, which has to do with historical developments in America when the hippies came out, and the hippies were about letting all hang out, their hair long, everything long, dragging on the ground, everything. And then in the West, you see the West has a way of turning every trend into profitable business. So long hair became a fashion. Long pants dragging below the ankles became a fashion. So it was just integrated into the economics of the system. That's the reason. So we have to look at the situation today. These are small things, as I said. They're small things. But if we have difficulty dealing with such small things as this, growing your beard is to stop shaving. It's not doing something you weren't doing, but it's not doing something you were doing. It's always easier to stop doing than to do. And you can't do that. Shortening your, the variety of other things. Similarly, in the case of women, with the hijab, we know what Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said about what is hijab. We know what Allah said about hijab. We all know it is not something new, but yet our women insist on going around wearing hijab which is so thin you can see what is underneath. So what hijab is this? Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said one of the signs of the last day is that the women will be dressed but undressed. They're wearing clothing, but they may as well not be wearing clothing because you can see what is underneath. Or they're wearing garments, instead of wearing the outer garments which should cover them in loose fashion, etc., they're wearing styles which are tight-fitting. You can see the shapes of their bodies and all this kind of thing. And if they are questioned, so this is our culture. This is Indian style, We're not Egyptians, we're not Saudis, we're not, that's their cultural thing. Of course, imitating their fashion or their way is not required in Islam. What we are required to imitate is the way prescribed by Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, it is essential for us to look back into ourselves and to make these kind of corrections. It's essential for us to look into our families and the role of the families with regards to education, the responsibilities. We have a responsibility to teach our children, to create an environment in the home which is an Islamic environment, which will encourage them to remember Allah. If our environment in the home is television, watching Hindi movies and, singing, dancing, all this wild stuff, and then we wonder when our children want to get out and do these same things, we say, why? This is not Muslim. But this is what we have raised them on. We have a responsibility in the home, that area that we control, to establish an Islamic environment. An environment wherein the remembrance of Allah is there. Not to say that it is without fun, without laughter, without, the enjoyment of life, yes. But it should be in accordance with the way and the guidance that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gave us. Similarly, in the community, there is a responsibility for education. And when we look at the family and the community, we have to look at issues. There are certain pressing issues in the society today which have to do with the practices of the people of the past. And I just mention them because I know it is a disease here. The disease regarding dowry, for example. These are family problems now, community problems. The dowry issue. That when a man wants to marry his daughter, he has to give money, wealth, to the bridegroom, the male. Islam has mahar. The mahar is given by the male to the female to indicate as symbolic of his preparedness to look after that young lady, that woman. This is mahar. That's what we have in Islam. But in Hindu culture and in Christian culture, the practice is the opposite. They paid the men to marry their daughters. This is their practice. As a result, you have the phenomenon in India of bride burnings. I am not telling you something that you're not well aware of. How many hundreds of women are burnt to death every year by their husbands and their mothers-in-laws and others because they didn't bring the dowries that were promised, or the family wants more. Now, one may say, oh, that's their problem. But guess what? I read in the newspaper not too long ago that in Dhaka, well, you might say it's not India, but it's India. I mean, people draw the lines and said this is Bangladesh and this is India, but reality, it is all one. In Dhaka, it said, a greedy husband burned to death his young wife at Sikpara in the city following a feud over dowry, police said. They said Zahir Mia poured gasoline over the body of his wife, Shahnaz, and set her on fire on Sunday. She died at Dhaka Medical College Hospital yesterday. This is Muslims. This is a sickness. It is something which the Muslim community must eradicate. It is something which is harmful to the community. This is why you will find that men, when their wives give birth to daughters, their face is, oh, another girl, a girl. If their wife can't give birth to boys, they want to divorce them. This happens amongst Muslims. The boy, they're happy. The girls are not happy. Why? Because girls are problems. You have to think about how much money you have to now, you have 5, 6 daughters, your life is now hell. You have to be raised and getting money from here, there, everything, trying to get them married. So much so that this belief has led to a distortions of basic Islamic practices. So you will find it common amongst Muslims who have this belief of this dowry, etc. They will say, it is not compulsory for a man to make Hajj if he has a daughter of marriageable age. Priority is getting his daughter married. So it is not required of him to make Hajj until he gets his daughter married. This is falsehood. This is a lie. This is against Islam. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, whoever has the means to make Hajj and doesn't make Hajj, it makes no difference to Allah whether he died a Christian or a Zoroastrian or whatever. Hajj is compulsory once one has the means. This new idea has only come up because Muslims have started the practice of paying dowries for their daughters. That's where it came from. So you can see how false ideas like this can actually go back and hurt the very pillars of Islam, damage them, distort them. So people will not fulfill a pillar of Islam because of this innovation. I just would like to, in the few remaining minutes, touch on some other aspects related to the establishment of Islam in a non-Muslim society, and that is the setting up of institutions. So it is essential for Muslims to establish academic institutions which have the proper ethos, the proper concept, the proper goals, the proper methodologies. If we put our children in non-Muslim schools, taught by non-Muslims, can we expect them to grow up with an Islamic understanding? No. And they spend more time in the schools than they spend at home. What is going to be the end result? The end result is what we are seeing around us today, where the masjids are filled with the old and the dying. The youths are elsewhere, in the cinema, in the discos, etc. This is the realities of a lack of an educational system by which to convey Islam in an academic environment so that the graduates of such schools would be able to take their place in society with the correct perspective. It means that we need institutions. We need schools, primary, secondary schools, which are teaching in English medium. In English medium, because the future, the present, is in English medium and knowledge. Teaching academics, your sciences, all the subjects, but by Muslim teachers and from an Islamic perspective. The Islamization of knowledge.
Let's talk.
So this is something that you have to point out to them in the Bible.
Something which is, I think, very direly needed by the youth, which is staying firm on the truth.
This is just one of the greatest examples for me of how to control your anger.
Within the framework of being the cleanest religion, the cleanest jurisprudence, and in the meantime, the kindest religion to animals.
Watch Let's Talk with Khalil Amanet as he interviews guests and discusses a variety of topics, everything from youth issues to religious issues. Join us here on Hoda TV.
Who
This is the realities of a lack of an educational system by which to convey Islam in an academic environment so that the graduates of such schools would be able to take their place in society with the correct perspective. It means that we need institutions. We need schools, primary, secondary schools, which are teaching in English medium. In English medium, because the future, the present, is in English medium and knowledge. Teaching academics, your sciences, all the subjects, but by Muslim teachers and from an Islamic perspective. The Islamization of knowledge. This is a process which is arising in different parts of the Muslim world today, but to a large degree it is absent here. In Mumbai, how many such institutions exist for Muslims? How many? I think none. Virtually none. And the sin of not having it is borne by the community. We cannot say, well, we are in a non-Muslim country. No. We have the means. We have millionaire Muslims right in our midst, economically capable to set up such institutions. Institutions which achieve the excellence in academia, but at the same time graduate students who have a sense of responsibility to their community. That they come out as a doctor, but they're not thinking I'm being a doctor because it makes a lot of money, I can get a nice house and car and have a nice life. But no, I have this knowledge to use to serve my community. I will give of this, of my time freely. Some of my time will be set aside in community service. This is missing. Missing across the board because we have no Islamic institutions which inculcate that in the minds, in the souls of the children. And economic institutions. Muslims are involved in riba up to their eyeballs. And it has been justified. But Allah said that He and His Messenger have declared war on those who refuse to give up riba. We have the means to set up alternatives. Islamic banking is something rising in other parts of the Muslim world. It needs to be established here. And those who have the knowledge and have the means, who do not do so, they carry the sin for the community. Because they could save the community from this evil, and they deliberately choose not to. It involves sacrifice, for sure. But Islam involves sacrifice. Remember, brothers and sisters, paradise is not cheap. There was a time in Europe during the Crusades when the Pope offered what were called indulgences. Indulgences were certificates which said the bearer of this certificate is to be given a place. This is directed to God. The bearer of this certificate is to be given a place in paradise. They sold this to the population. They're called papal indulgences. They were sold to the population. People paid money, and bought these certificates signed by the Pope, guaranteeing them places in paradise. Okay, this is history. Muslims today feel that they are guaranteed paradise. And the reality, as Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, and I'll close with this Hadith. كل أمتي يدخلون الجنة. All of my ummah will enter paradise. A mass of Muslims heard this and said, MashaAllah. No need to do anything after that. The Prophet ﷺ has said all of his ummah is going to paradise, finished. That's it. Muslims are in paradise, non-Muslims are in hell. But the Prophet ﷺ didn't stop there. He went on to say, إِلَّا مَنْ أَبَى, except he who refuses. The companions asked the Prophet ﷺ, وَمَنْ يَأْبَى يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, who would refuse, O Messenger of Allah? He said, Man ata'ani dakhana al-jannah. Whoever obeys me will enter paradise. وَمَنْ عَصَانِي فَقَدْ أَبَى. And whoever disobeys me has refused. Whoever disobeys me has refused to go to paradise. So let us get back to the realities of the religion, built on the foundations of the Quran and the Sunnah. Let us transform that knowledge into faith by living in accordance with the Quran and the Sunnah, not merely speaking about it, being aware of it, but living in accordance with it, because it is in the living that faith is born. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair for the interesting talk we had. Now we would have, I believe, the more interesting session than the talk, the question and answer session. To derive more benefit from this question and answer session for all present here today, we would like the following rules to be followed. Questions asked should be on the topic of the day, Muslims in a non-Muslim society. Kindly state your question briefly and to the point. Only one question at a time may be asked. May we have the first question from the ladies section, please?
Assalamu alaikum, brother. Brother, as you said that there are so many Muslims in this country alone. They are even more than the Arabs. And then you said that if you have to practice Islam, you can even do hijrah. So where will we Muslim go out from here?
Where could people go for hijrah?
Yes.
Well, I explained that hijrah may be out of the country or it may be within the country. Remember, in the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, there were two types of hijrahs. There was hijrah outside of the Arabian Peninsula to Ethiopia, meaning they had to cross the waters. And the other hijrah was internally within the peninsula from Mecca to Medina. So, as I suggested here, I was not proposing that Muslims should all pack up their bags and leave India, right? It wasn't realistic. I suggested instead that if one had difficulty practicing Islam in one part of India, they may go to another part of India where Muslims are in larger numbers, they have more established communities, whatever, where they could better practice Islam. So this was the suggestion.
Why righteous companions? It is Islam that given us the sense of dignity. I love all of them in a way that you cannot imagine. That Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh would say something and the Quran would come down matching what he said. والسابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه. Just compare what you did for Islam with just one of them.
were Abu Muttalib and maybe Amina Muslims? Because Abu Muttalib, from within, he felt like Islam was the right religion. Will he go to Jannat?
I thought that was very clear. In Sahih Muslim, right, this is the collection of hadith, the second most authentic collection of hadith for Muslims, main body of Muslims. It states there that he will be in the hellfire, receiving the least severe punishment. Prophet ﷺ has already said he's going to hell and will be punished in hell. The Prophet's father,
Yeah.
ﷺ, his father and his mother, you know, it is also recorded in Sahih Muslim. A man came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked him, it's in Abu Dawood, he asked him, where's my father? It's a person who accepted Islam. And he wanted to know about his father who had died before. And the Prophet ﷺ said, he's in hell. And the man turned away with tears in his eyes, and he called him back and said, you know, don't cry, he's with my father. So he has borne witness that his father is in hell. And we know his mother, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade him from going to the grave of his mother at first. Then he allowed him to go, but prohibited him for praying for his mother.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nayyar Azam. What are the strategies of Muslims in Canada and America, etc.? Are they correlate with ours? Thank you.
Well, as I said, you know, in the very beginning, it was a very, you know, it's a very big topic, but the main area of concern should be that of education. And this is an area which in Canada and the United States, there is a big effort right now to develop Muslim schools, you know, with high academic standards, but at the same time with an Islamic flavor. The other area I spoke of in terms of organization and institutions, you know, referring to the Islamic banking systems. These are the things which are also necessary. Along with that, or whatever other institutions are necessary in the community, whether it be in the medical fields, to have female medical specialists to be able to deal with the problems of females, you know, and males with the problems of males. So we have clinics or hospitals which will treat people in accordance with Islamic principles, you know, because right now, most Muslims, when they suffer, when their families suffer, you know, we expect hijab from our women to cover themselves, etc. But then we tell them, go to the hospital, and the doctor tells them, take off your clothes. You know, I mean, this is a big contradiction. And we have to say, well, whose responsibility is it? Are we excused to send our women, Muslim women, to men to be examined, etc., etc.? Are we justified? Will Allah forgive us? These type of questions we have to ask ourselves. And so we have to develop strategies, which means directing our children into fields of education which will develop the necessary skills, etc., which would provide for the needs of the community. You know, I mean, these are amongst some. I mean, there you know, economic cooperation in businesses. This is very important because a community, its vitality depends on the degree to which it's able to recirculate its money. You know, that when money leaves the community, it weakens the community. So if Muslims are able to put their money back into the community, then that will strengthen the community as a whole. So this sense of economic cooperation is very, very important for Muslims, especially in a non-Muslim environment. Because we have to know that when we spend money in a Muslim business, etc., then we are giving a person something which they are going to give back to the community in the case of zakah, etc., etc. And of course, we need institutions to establish the collection of zakah. Because again, zakah is something which is very much neglected today in the Muslim community. I think a great proportion of people are not paying any zakah at all. And those that are paying zakah are paying it to the wrong people. So this is a big, big problem. And in the division of inheritance, Islamic inheritance laws not being implemented. where people are following the traditions of giving to their eldest son and, this type of thing, and women are cut off from inheritance, these type of things, where Islam is very specific in terms of how inheritance should be divided. So there's a whole range of economic issues that the community have to address, which again are from the Quran and from the Sunnah. They have to go back to the foundations and re-establish these institutions in the correct fashion. And as well, there are issues also of politics. I didn't get a chance to go into it because of our time limitations, but also the areas of politics where Muslims are enjoined to get involved in the political system here to the degree that it is necessary to protect the interests of the Muslim community. I mean, not to take, politics as a goal, an end. The goal is to help the Muslim community, not to be a big-time politician. See, but what happens is that, politics is what they call politricks. Politicians are known for their corruption. They use these things for their own ends. So they will call on Muslims and so on, so and so when they want to get elected. But as soon as they're in place, then they're taking the money, putting it in their pockets, all these kind of things. But again, that comes back to the problem of how they were educated. Because they went through and did political science, which is Machiavellian. Political science is teaching you that the ends justifies the means, which is capitalist politics, Machiavellian and atheist politics, when they should be learning Islamic politics. So without institutions which will teach them the correct approach to politics Islamically, then we cannot be surprised to find our leading politicians, working against our interests. So these are just among the many.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
There is a doubt in most of us that we are staying in a non-Muslim society and we are supposed to avoid the food that is prepared by the non-Muslims. How far is it true? And we as Muslims staying in a society surrounded by non-Muslims, how can we avoid it, if it's true?
This is another area. This is the area of social interaction. As Muslims in a non-Muslim environment, one has to deal with non-Muslims. Now, to what degree are we allowed to interact with them? We're invited to their homes. Can we eat their food? This is the question you're asking, basically, right? Or they're having their celebration, Diwali or Christmas. Can we join in their celebrations? They greet us, Merry Christmas. Can we respond to them, Merry Christmas to you too? These are among the issues that also have to be looked at. I'll just try to briefly touch in terms of the food. Food which is slaughtered by non-Muslims, pagans in particular, food slaughtered by them we cannot eat. If they say Bismillah, or they say, even if they make Shahada before doing it, but it is just to sell it, and we know they're only doing it because it's business, then we can't eat this food, right? If it is something which is vegetarian, then it is edible. One may eat it. But again, if it is something on the days of their religious festivals where they, dedicate it to their gods or whatever else that people do, then of course, again, you can't eat it, So a Muslim has to identify, without hurting the feelings of others as much as possible, a Muslim has to identify the boundaries within which they can function with their neighbors, with their friends, at the job, etc., etc., So it's very important to make it clear from the beginning so you don't catch yourself in a situation where people are now inviting you and you have to tell them no. Or you feel so embarrassed, you say okay and you go and do something which is haram. In the case of the wishing of the greetings, of course, to wish greetings, whether it is Diwali or whether it is Christmas, this is forbidden for Muslims. I know some Muslims will argue, well, when Eid time comes, the non-Muslims, they tell us Happy Eid, right? And they don't believe in it. So when we say to them, Happy Christmas, we don't believe in it too. And we're just, trying to show Islam is social and we're nice people, It's so antisocial if they say Happy Christmas to us and we just say to them sorry, I can't tell you Happy Christmas, you know. Or you don't say anything back. It's so antisocial, you know. But the point is that, you know, for a Christian, you can explain to them that if a Satan worshiper, and today we have Satan worshipers, right? It's growing in the West. You have the Church of Satan, where people are worshiping Satan openly. They have a Satan's Bible even. Huh? Now, if a Satan worshiper came to you as a Christian and said to you, Happy Satan's Day, would you respond back to them, Happy Satan's Day to you also? They would say, no, we couldn't say this. This is evil. This is bad. Well, you have to explain to them that in the same way you cannot respond back to the Satan worshiper, for us, Christmas is the same. It is similar. Because in the end, without wanting to hurt our Christian friends' feelings, the 25th of December is Satan's Day. Because it was Satan who tricked them into believing that God became a man and was born on that day. Because surely it wasn't God who told them that. So if it wasn't God, then who? But Satan. So in the same way, we cannot wish the Satan worshiper Happy Satan's Day. We cannot wish the Christian Happy Christmas.
Yes, brother.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Alaikum salam.
Just you have you have shared about our dresses, just like pant or shirts and blazers, etc. But brothers, I'm just studying. I'm only a student, and I'm just studying. And you know about Bombay or means modern society and modern education. So I'm wearing always a pant shirt. So I'll able to punish at the judgment time or not?
Are you able to?
Able to punishment at the time of judgment.
He's following a social norm of wearing pant and shirt as all other students do.
Yeah.
Of his age group. So he's asking in context of the day of judgment. And in terms of punishment,
are you able to punishment or not?
Well, I would say there will be. Because Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said that the believer is not imma. You know, whenever people are this way, he's this way. When the people are that way, he's that way. The believer is not that way. The believer sets his or her own course. They have their own mind. They're not a slave to fashion. You see, Prophet ﷺ said, Ta'isa abdul dirham wa abdul dinar. That the slave of the dirham and the dinar, the money, one who is a slave, a worshipper of money, will have a wretched life. Similarly, one who is a slave of fashion, their life will be wretched because you will be caught up always trying to be fashionable. Right? And the fashions are changing all the time. It is expensive, so you become squandering of your money because what you wore last year is no longer in fashion, so you throw it away, you're wearing something else. And then you end up wearing fashion which, according to Islam, becomes haram.